And on Valentine's Day, it's a day of flowers and candy. I think I might take my Valentine to out to dinner and maybe a movie. I love movies. You guys like movies?
Yeah.
I'm one of those types that I still like to go to the theater. You got the big screen, you got the big sound. I need the big sound at my age. You have that community of people watching the same thing you're watching, and you have that collective gasp during Jaws, or the spontaneous cheering during Rocky. It's great. It really is. The best thing, though, the very best thing about going to the theater is that you don't have to shush your spouse. Everybody else does it for you. Not that I would want to. But it's just a communal experience that you just can't buy, really. Although I do have to tell you that I also like staying inside, getting on the couch, watching an old movie. Casablanca is one of my favorite ones. But I don't like having a whole lot of neighbors over to watch it with me. Because once again, you can't shush your neighbors either. And they're always asking questions, you know? Why does Sam have to play it again? How come Ingrid Bergman can't make up her mind? It gets so exhausting that after a while you just have to say, look guys, we're all watching the same show. And you hope they take the hint. I hope your friends are smarter than mine. But recently, my Valentine, Patty Jean, and I went to the theater, and we watched Spotlight. Terrific movie. If you haven't seen it, I won't spoil it for you. But during the Spotlight, nobody was shushing everybody, although people were talking in the theater. And you could hear the murmurs going through the theater. That can't be true. Does this really happen? Is it really a true story? There were some people that were so surprised by it. They found it unbelievable. Other people weren't all that surprised. They kind of figured that all out. And I think that our daily lives often mirror that. We're all having different perceptions of a reality that we're all having difficulty seeing. Now, I think there's a few reasons for this. The first reason is, and I plead guilty, we don't all pay attention all the time. We simply don't. The facts are there. We can discover them on our own, or we could ask someone, but we don't do it. We simply don't. Now, for you gentlemen out there on Valentine's Day, let me give you an example. You might not have bought your Valentine any flowers this year because you figure, well, she knows how I feel. Now you're a little bewildered because she's a little upset with you. If this has happened to you for 15 years in a row, you're not paying attention. There's another aspect to not paying attention, and it's this. Have you ever seen two people arguing about something and neither one of them knows a darn thing about what they're arguing about? Now, we're in tax season right now. Tax season brings out a lot of these things, a lot of these discussions. If you ever see Frank and Bob arguing about what deductions they're able to take, you realize pretty quickly they're both going to go to jail. It's only a matter of time. Well, Jesus ran into this lack of attention. I'm sure he ran into it many times. There's one time in particular that's written of in the book of Mark. And the disciples aren't really paying attention. They're not getting what he's saying. And I think Jesus was teasing them a little bit. Some people think he was mad at them, but he can't be mad all the time. What he said was, have you eyes and not see? Have you ears and not hear? Well, I guess the answer for most of us is not all the time. We can do better. Another reason that we have trouble agreeing on what the reality of things are is sometimes we do what I call wishful believing. We're believing things are true because we wish they were true. If a football fan comes to you and says, next year the Cowboys are going to win the Super Bowl, you know that that person is either from Dallas or they're delusional. Of course, that goes hand in hand. So, that might be a bad example. Let me bring it home to you ladies on Valentine's Day. All right? If you think that, and if you believe that this is the year that finally your Valentine is going to spontaneously prefer to go out to L'Auberge Chez Francois and then watch Steel Magnolias rather than Golden Corral and Blazing Saddles. Not true. That's wishful believing. The Apostle Paul, writing in the book of Corinthians about love and what would make a happy marriage, he ran into this wishful believing. He writes in 1 Corinthians that, oh my goodness, how I wish everyone were just like me. I know how he felt. However, he did recognize that everyone has their own special gifts, some of one kind and some of another. It would do us well to remember that. Another reason that we all have trouble seeing a reality, we self-classify ourselves sometimes. I'm a Republican. I'm a Democrat. I'm a Unity member. You're an infidel. See how that falls in? Well, actually, self-classification, it can be useful. It's kind of a shorthand as to what we're thinking right now. And if that leads us to setting the table for a rational discussion, well, that's a good thing. On the other hand, if we're using that as a crutch, if we're using that to isolate ourselves, to shut off competing viewpoints, it can be disastrous. Now, I think nowhere in society is this more evident today than in our race relations. Now, I know for myself personally, the O.J. Simpson trial was kind of a watershed. It showed me that my viewpoints were sometimes markedly different from the viewpoints of my African American friends. Kind of slapped me in the face. And I know that this divide is still evident. It's evident in these events surrounding Ferguson, Missouri, Los Angeles, New Orleans, Chicago, Cleveland, Florida, New York, Baltimore, and I think I've forgotten like a dozen. It's a sad situation. And the self-classification has just it's not been helpful in that regard. But there is a basis for reconciliation. And that basis is from the writer H. Emily Cady, the great Unity writer. And she has paraphrased and coordinated some of the verses in the book of John. And I'm going to read a very short verse, try to keep awake. As you, Father, are in me, and I am in you, may they also be in us, I in them, and you in me, that they may become completely one. This passage points to the intertwining of God's Spirit, your spirit, and the spirit of your community. It's a basis for mutual respect, and it's a basis for reconciliation. I think we ought to be open to that. Now, there is a fourth and final reason for struggling to find our realities. And it might be by design. We may not individually have the capacity to understand and encompass the whole of spiritual reality. We may not be able to do it. Have you all heard the story of the blind men who are feeling a separate part of an elephant and having a hard time describing what the elephant really looks like? You all have? Good, we don't have to go over that again. But I would like to tell you a little bit about Plato's simile to our perceptions of reality. Plato likened our perceptions of reality to those of people in a dark cave. In that cave, there's one fire. And people's perceptions of their reality in that cave are derived from watching the shadows on the wall and watching them dance. So they do have some conception of reality, but it's incomplete and imprecise. I think Plato was onto something there, but he missed something, and you know what it is. You know that each one of you has a little divine spark that helps light at least a little bit of your spiritual journey's path. And if you combine your spark with that of the person next to you, maybe you can get a little more illumination. Perhaps by collaborating, cooperating, and comparing notes, we can all progress. Just look at the different spiritual traditions that have been brought together in this room today, this morning. We have people that were brought up in unity. We have former Roman Catholics who bring with them an imbued sense of the need to do good. We have Methodists, we have the Jewish folks who were imbued with a sense to find meaning in life. We have Baptists who have brought with them an enthusiasm for faith that I know I lack sometimes. Together, each combining their own little divine spark with someone else can help us progress. Just as man has emerged from the caves that we used to find shelter in physically, by cooperating, we can begin to spiritually emerge from Plato's cave. Together, we can help find a spiritual reality that is grander and better than anything that we can individually imagine. But I digress. As I was saying, Patty and I, we were in the theater watching Spotlight, and the movie's getting over, and the credits are rolling. I'm trying to eat my popcorn because I spent $5 on it. $5. And I'm trying to finish my popcorn, and I remarked, wow, I wish the ending was a little more uplifting. And my Valentine, Patty Jean, she gently pats my arm. She lovingly, kindly, but condescendingly says, don't you understand? The ending of the movie is just a new beginning. Everyone who watched the movie had a fire lit for them. Don't you get it? We were all watching the same show. All I can say is, don't you miss your new beginnings. Thanks.